Chapter 830, Infiltration. The mirror on Klein's pillow glowed with an aqueous luster as silver points of light gathered to form Loni's words. Exalted Great Master, your loyal and humble servant, Arodes, is constantly at your service. Klein stood beside the bed and looked at the mirror before calmly asking, "Where is the Antigonus family's notebook located behind St. Samuel Cathedral's Channy's Gate?" He wanted to confirm the location so that he could directly head for his target and complete his plan in the shortest time possible. Through this, he could avoid all kinds of accidents. Silver text distorted and changed on the mirror's surface, forming a new line of text. "It's a Grade 1 sealed artifact. It will be on the right in basement 2. I can't see anything more specific." Klein tersely acknowledged as he said, "It's your turn to ask." Arodes immediately dispersed the silver words and presented a new question. "What other instructions do you have?" If this were any other time, Klein definitely would have secretly tisked, but his high-strung mind made him nod. "Just watch over my illusion like before to deal with any accidents." "All right, Master." Arodes didn't hesitate to give an answer as it hurriedly added, I will hold back my instincts. I swear to you, the great ruler above the spirit world." Klein nodded gently, took 2 steps forward, and made the mirror look like Dwayne Dance. The image became clearer and bigger until it looked real. After some slight adjustments, Klein made it lie in bed as though it was already sleeping. At this moment, he saw Dwayne Dance turned his head over and smile at him with a toady look. At the same time, he reached out his hands and pulled the blanket towards his head. Without a word, Klein transformed into the cold and crazy adventurer, Jayaman Sparrow, as creeping hunger on his left hand turned transparent. His body rapidly phased away as he traveled to the other end of Phelps Street, where St. Samuel Cathedral was. Following that, he walked to the square filled with pigeons in the day, and he hid himself in a corner under the guise of the shadows. A short while later, a batch of believers who had attended Mass came out of the cathedral. Before long, servants began leaving the cathedral with all sorts of miscellaneous items, walking to the trash bins in an alley. A number of people were dealing with the feces that was found at the spot where the carriages parked at. At this moment, a servant's body suddenly trembled before he bowed his head. He seriously began cleaning the area, and he even proactively walked towards the square as though he wanted to clean the trash there. He slowly opened up a distance from the others until he came to a shadowy area. When the other servants stopped placing their attention on him, a hand suddenly outlined itself and reached out of the void, grabbing him by the shoulder and causing his body to phase away into nothingness. Klein had directly traveled to a cheap 2-bedroom condominium in East Borough. He had teleported over a few days ago with another identity to rent it. A traveler's ability is really convenient. The only problem is that I need to have a pirate sacrifice his life every time. Klein lampooned to relieve his anxiety as he made the servant lie in bed. Then, he took out a long metal vial and threw it at him. The servant caught it and pulled out the stopper before gulping down the soporific medicine in it. In a few seconds, he fell into a deep slumber as Senner surfaced to the side. Klein observed the servant on the bed as his body suddenly softened like he had transformed into a slime monster. However, he didn't collapse into a pool. After some swaying, he instantly shortened his height by 15 centimeters as his skin darkened in color. His facial features moved, and soon he had transformed into the servant. And at this moment, Senner had already taken off the servant's clothes. Without wasting any time, Klein quickly changed into those clothes and moved the items from the iron cigar case over. Picking up the broom and surveying the area before confirming that there weren't any problems, he made Senner return to the gold coin before Klein lowered his left arm and spread his fingers. He watched as creeping hunger produced an indescribable transparency effect. After teleporting back to the shadowy corner, Klein bent his back and began cleaning the area seriously. Step by step, he approached the busy servants but maintained a distance from them to prevent anyone from chatting with him, which would increase his chances of being exposed. After about 30 minutes, the servants gathered together and entered St. Samuel Cathedral and turned into a side door. At a distance away from the priests, a servant stretched his arms and said, "How tiring." Klein pretended to look uninterested in the conversation due to his fatigue as he tersely nodded without participating in the conversation. Soon, they returned to the servants' quarters. It comprised of 2 rather big rooms with many bunk beds inside. Beside each bed was a wardrobe and chest. Klein was immediately at a loss. He didn't know whether to head left or right. Thankfully, he was a seer. He could solely rely on his spiritual intuition on matters that didn't involve beyonders or mysterious domains. Furthermore, he was still holding onto a broom. Hence, he pretended to have his hand slip and secretly did a dowsing rod seeking. He received a revelation that he should head right. When he entered the room on the right, Klein deliberately slowed down a little, observing the actions of the other servants. Then, he mimicked them by placing the broom in the region behind the door. Then, he went outside to the common bathroom to wash his face, rinse his mouth, and wash his feet. After he completed all of this in a slow manner, the bed that belonged to him revealed itself, the bed that wasn't occupied. Lying in bed, Klein finally felt relieved as he secretly sighed in relief. The servants were all exhausted, and before long, they fell asleep, producing a symphony of snores. Klein maintained his consciousness and very slowly removed creeping hunger. Folding it up into a tiny shape, he stuffed it inside the iron cigar case, putting it together with Azek's copper whistle and Senner's gold coin. Seconds turned to minutes as he found it impossible to sleep due to anxiety. All he could do was rely on cogitation to force himself to sleep for a few hours. He woke up at a specific time and released Senner. This marionette's cold aura rapidly melded with the surroundings as the spirit-body threads collapsed inwardly, gradually turning black without any origins. It can still be controlled. Klein nodded indiscernibly and made the wraith use the stained glass windows high above and the bright stone floor tiles to arrive at the staircase that led to the keepers above. He believed that if Senner hadn't been contaminated ahead of time, making Channy's Gate's core seal think of it as one of its own, it definitely would have reacted and cleansed it. How could a wraith have the ability to move freely in an Orthodox church's cathedral? And due to the tacit approval from the core seal and the disruption from the paper angel, the demigod-level archbishop that lived somewhere in the cathedral wasn't alerted. Under Klein's control, and using the sensations from the contamination, the invisible Senner slowly walked to the second floor before turning left and finding the residence of the keepers. It's Monday tomorrow. This week's Monday shift is likely done by the keeper I met first. Klein had long figured out the roster, so he made the dark red-coated wraith stealthily pass through the wooden door and float into different rooms to identify the target. As there were only a few people inside, he quickly found the pale elder with loose facial skin, sparse hair, and a big nose. Senner immediately took out a sedative vial and placed it to the side. Then, before the keeper sensed anything, it possessed him. The keeper, who was in deep sleep, lost control over his body before he could even wake up to resist. All he could do was open his grayish-blue eyes and watch himself slowly pick up the vial and pull off the stopper. Then, he downed the liquid inside. His body convulsed abnormally as his organs seemed to be engaged in a violent struggle. After a full minute, he slowly went limp and closed his eyes again, entering a dreamless sleep. After doing all of this, Senner left the body of the keeper and used all kinds of mirror surfaces to leap back to the servants' quarters before entering Klein's body. Klein immediately emitted a cold, dead, and distant aura. Even showing an expression appeared to be difficult. He slowly got out of bed and silently left the servants' quarters. In the shadows and murals that weren't illuminated by the moonlight, he walked to the second floor and entered the target's room. Standing by the bedside, Klein, whilst in the appearance of a servant, slowly grew taller as his hair turned gray and sparse, while his nose enlarged significantly. In just a few seconds, he looked identical to the keeper who just drank the sedative. Even his aura was identical. Changing into the black clergyman's coat that was placed to the side, Klein moved the keeper's and servants' clothes underneath the bed and laid down as he kept note of the time. At 5:30, he woke up ahead of time, finishing the white bread he had prepared the night before and drank a cup of water. He then looked quietly out the window. Just as day broke, Klein maintained his deadpan state and walked out the door. He went to the first floor, and following the path he had previously verified, he took a left turn. After walking for a moment, he wasn't surprised to see a priest. This was his experience as a former Nighthawk. Therefore, Klein wasn't too worried that he couldn't find the path. The priest stood outside a secret door that led underground. As he raised his right hand, he tapped 4 times clockwise on his chest and said, "May the goddess bless you." "Praise the lady," Klein replied hoarsely and similarly drew a crimson moon. He didn't stay any longer and walked past the priest. Under the lamps that lined the walls, he walked down the staircase and arrived at the crossroads. Based on his understanding of his environment, Klein believed that turning right would leave the cathedral, and it would likely lead to the disguised security company or other organization belonging to the Nighthawks. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to turn left. At that moment, he saw a man wearing a red glove walkover. The casually dressed man had black hair and green eyes with handsome looks. He was none other than Leonard Mitchell.